Alright, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. For this video, I wanted to talk about who is going to have the best Olympia debut, meaning their first time at the Open Olympia. Which of the newcomers are going to place the highest? Because we have a lot of them. You have 9 guys this year that are going to be competing at the Olympia for the very first time. And a good chunk of these guys have been much discussed this year. So you've got Urs Kalasinski, Good Vito, Rubiel Mosquera, Brett Wilkin, Behrooz Tabani, Sas Harati, Jordan Hutchinson, Chen Long Shen, and Dorian Haywood, who won the Masters Olympia earlier this year. Now, the way I want to do this, I'm going to do an individual kind of little breakdown of each guy, but I wanted to break down this list of 9 guys into brackets. Who's going to do the worst, who's going to do the best, in order. So the first bracket is guys that I think can crack the top 6 or do better. Not that that's where I'm predicting them to place, but guys that I think have a shot at top 6 or better. So I've got 4 guys in this bracket. This is the highest bracket, and this is the order that I have them ranked. Behrooz Tabani is number 1. Obviously, I'm not saying first place, but just in order of which debut will be the best. Behrooz Tabani, number 1. Good Vito, number 2. Urs Kalasinski, number 3. And Neckzilla, number 4. And I'm going to explain each guy here. So starting with Behrooz. Behrooz has a lot of things going for him. I think the biggest thing that is in Behrouz's arsenal is that he's been tested against the best in the world, especially at that Dubai Pro, which he is now the 2-time champ. He's routinely beaten top 10 Olympians, multiple of them, back-to-back years at that show. And really, of all these guys, it is their Olympia debut. Because of Behrouz's visa issues, he's a lot more battle-tested than the rest of these guys. And on paper, he's really the only one that's making his debut this year that has already beaten top 10 Olympians. I think William Bonac is a prime example, 7th place last year. Behrooz has now beaten Bonac routinely, multiple times. And I think that that statistic alone would probably be enough to say that's why he's got the best chance of all the Olympia debuts this year to crack the top 6, because he's already beaten a top 7 guy more than once, but he also beat Tony O'Burton, he's beaten Nathan Diasha, he's beaten Neckzilla. It's a pretty impressive list, and he's done it several times. And also, just speaking of his physique, he's got a great balance. He's got a good amount of size, he's got an aesthetically pleasing physique, and he comes in really good condition. He's got some really dangerous things in his arsenal, and I think that so far, he's been the most consistent. He's proven himself, and I think we're likely going to see, just based on how many times we've seen him on stage, how many times we've seen him in great shape, how many times we've already seen him win big shows, I think we can probably expect he's not going to miss the mark at the Olympia this year, and he also has this slight X factor that I think he really wants to make a crazy statement here. After all these years of trying to get to the Olympia and being denied, this is his first one. I think he's really pulling out all the stops here, and he's going to leave people talking about, man, what a shame that this guy was never able to be on the Olympia stage before, because look what he did in 2025. So Behrooz, number 1. Good Vito, I have as the second highest chance of cracking the top 6, making a big impact here. Good Vito, I would say, of all these newcomers, has the most wow factor. His legs, you talk about a guy like Neckzilla, he's got these crazy big legs, but when you talk about size, separation, and just the wow factor of the lower body, I don't think it gets much better than Good Vito right now across the entire IFBB. So he's got wow factor. We've seen him come in really good condition. He's also got a pretty aesthetically pleasing physique, a little bit weak from the back, but I have him ahead of Urs. I think Urs is weaker from the back and doesn't have as much wow factor. Now, the reason I don't have Good Vito ranked number 1 of all the debuts is that battle-tested element that Behrooz has. Realistically, Good Vito hasn't faced really anybody that crazy, and he hasn't beaten anybody that crazy. Keep in mind, back at the Detroit Pro, where he faced Martin Fitzwater and lost to Martin Fitzwater, by the way. Martin hadn't even made his Olympia debut yet. Yes, he was fourth at the Olympia, so he's a really good bodybuilder. But at the time, he wasn't. And that's the only really big, heavy hitter that Good Vito has gone up against and almost beaten. Keep in mind, he won the Arnold Classic South America at the very beginning of this year, which is what qualified him for the Olympia this year. And there's nobody in that lineup that was even an Olympian, I believe. Most of them were native Brazilian bodybuilders, and no shade on them, but most of us, at least most of us English bodybuilding fans, English-speaking bodybuilding fans, we hadn't heard of most of them. And again, like thinking back to that South America show, thinking back to Detroit of 2024, that Detroit show, there was only 6 guys that even competed in men's open bodybuilding that year. Martin Fitzwater won, Good Vito was second, Ron Gordon in third, Justin Luis Rodriguez in fourth, Gabriel Garapi in fifth, and Harry Harris in sixth. So between that, the Arnold South America, unfortunately we didn't get to see him compete at the Pittsburgh Pro. As good as Good Vito looks on social media, as crazy as his physique updates look, as much as there is to talk about with him and all these freaky attributes that he has, we haven't seen him really test himself or really prove himself standing next to the best of the best or even close to the best of the best. Martin is the best example of that, but again, Martin hadn't even made his Olympia debut yet, and Martin beat him. But when you talk about the other 2 guys on this list, that's really the only thing that separates Good Vito from Beirut is not having that contest history. But when you compare him to Urs, he has the size over Urs. A lot of size over Urs. But he also has a good shape, a good structure, and he has been consistently conditioned, which is another thing that he has over Neckzilla. Consistently conditioned. I have yet to see Good Vito really compete truly out of shape, and we've seen Neckzilla do that a few times. I think Good Vito has a better structure than Neckzilla, better condition, more consistent condition. And when you talk about how crazy Neckzilla's legs are, I would argue that Good Vito's are better. So let's talk about Urs Kalasinski next. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Urs. A lot of you guys are big fans of Urs. Here's what I think Urs has working in his advantage. I think he's definitely going to be top 10, but here's why I say that top 6, he's only third on my list. We can all agree he needs to add some size. We can all agree the back needs to come up. We can all agree the arms need to come up. Just more size overall. We all agree on that. But what he does have and what he has shown, the same thing as Good Vito, consistent condition, and I would say maybe even better than what we've seen from Good Vito, and probably the most aesthetically pleasing physique that you're going to see on an open bodybuilding stage, which I think is big. To me personally, I know it's a very subjective thing, but to me personally as a bodybuilding fan, I think that's huge. And that's why I like him better than Neckzilla, and I like his odds better than Neckzilla. Because Neckzilla has all the size in the world, but he's put together weird. His physique has, in my opinion, has no type of flow. His structure is not good. He has body parts that don't really match up. His lower body is way disproportionately bigger. He doesn't have a great V-taper. His body is kind of like a Frankenstein mashed together of all these like big body parts. He doesn't have any flow, but Urs has that classic physique element that he's bringing to open, and you combine that with Urs being, I think, one of the hardest dieters, the hardest workers in the room when it comes to condition. You can count on Urs being in shape. You cannot say that about Neckzilla. We cannot count on him being in shape. We can hope, we can think. You cannot count on it, and we all know that. Which brings me to Neckzilla. Look, I know I don't seem like the biggest fan of Neckzilla. And he's made me more of a fan with the last 2 shows that he won because he did improve from show to show. He came in tighter and tighter, and he showed that he seemed to be evolving from the old version of Neckzilla, and he was trying to get that stage time, that experience, and it made me more of a believer in him. But, I look at the update that I saw a couple days ago. His face looks puffy. You don't really see any definition in his arms and his shoulders, no vascularity. He doesn't look dry. He's got that thick skin look to his physique. I think that even though he's gotten better at his last 2 shows, and I think he convinced me a little bit more of his potential at those last 2 shows, I think that he still hasn't fully proven his consistency. The shows that he blew off the first year of his career, what we saw from him this year until he started winning the shows, it was very different versions of his physique. Like the Neckzilla that we saw at the Dubai Pro this year was not even close to the same Neckzilla that we saw winning the last two shows. And I think even though that was impressive, that still shows inconsistency. I remember everybody talking about like the people around Rubiel going into Dubai. Everybody around him was talking about he's going to shock the world. It's going to be, it's going to blow people's minds. This is the year. And then he came into Dubai looking like a guest poser. And yes, he improved the later shows that he did, which, by the way, were also less competitive lineups, less big names, less Olympians, if any Olympians in those lineups. So I'm still not fully convinced that he is top 6 potential, and that's why I have him at the bottom of my top 6 potential list. Do I think he's got a good shot at cracking the top 10? Yes. Do I think he has the potential to crack the top 6? Yes. Am I fully convinced that he's going to do it? No. And that's why he's on the bottom of this list. Now, keep in mind, this is my top bracket. These are the best guys that I think are making their debut. So I still have him as like an A-lister for me, making his Olympia debut this year. I'm just trying to explain why I have him ranked in 4th. And let me know what you guys are thinking so far based on this first bracket. Before we get into the second bracket, do you agree or disagree with kind of my upper echelon bracket here? Now, let's move into the next bracket. These are guys, I'm going to classify this as guys that have a really strong chance at being top 10 and potentially top 6, but more so we're talking about placings 7, 8, 9, 10. That's what we're talking about with this bracket. I think they have a good shot. So in order, number 1 in this bracket is going to be Jordan Hutchinson. Number 2 in this bracket is going to be Sas Harati. Number 3 in this bracket is going to be Brett. Now, I think this bracket is actually a lot closer. Like, between each other, I think they're a lot closer than my first bracket. So let me tell you why I have Jordan in number 1. I think you could make an argument for Jordan even being in my first bracket. He won 2 shows, incredible condition, more size than Urs. I just don't think he has a comparable shape, a comparable structure. He doesn't have the most pleasing physique to look at. But he does have more muscle than Urs, and he has been consistently conditioned, and he did win 2 shows. So in fairness to Jordan, I want to say that you could make a really strong argument for him being in my first bracket as a contender for top 6, but I feel more comfortable with him in just saying top 10 potential. I think top 6 might be a stretch, but he did really impress me. You guys know what a big fan of Quentin I am, and both Urs and Jordan shut Quentin down every single time. And I think Quentin has some of the highest potential in the IFBB if he can ever put it all together. So for these guys to shut him down like that, just back to back, these guys are impressive because I think Quentin is the real deal. Even though he's not a top Olympian or anything like that, I think being able to shut him out, both Urs and Jordan, I think that's an impressive accomplishment. So Jordan with the size, Jordan with the condition, Jordan with 2 pro wins this year, I have him number 1 in this bracket of top 10 potential. Number 2 in this bracket, I've got Sas Harati. I love Sas. I love what we've seen from him this year. Winning the Impro Classic, winning the Toronto Pro. So he's another guy that won 2 shows this year. But he was kind of in that same situation as Quint Beastwood in the beginning of the year, March, April, May. 2nd in Cali, 2nd in Detroit, 2nd at FIBO, 5th at the New York Pro, then won 2 back-to-back shows in June. Sas is a guy, and again, maybe you can make an argument for him in the top bracket, but maybe not. Sas is a guy that the consistency of his condition, I'm a big conditioning guy. I love what Sas brings. I think his physique, it does have some structural issues. I think it does have some weak points. But one thing you can count on with Sas is that he's going to be in shape. And this is why I have him, even though he won 2 shows, I'll tell you why I have him in that bracket of this second bracket here. He did all those shows this year. And the shows that he did face some of the higher level guys, he lost almost all of them. New York Pro, you had Bonac and Nick and Regan, and he was 5th at that show. So even though he won those 2 shows, some of the shows that he lost, he was losing to guys that are, like Regan, for example, is like an outside of the top 10 at the Olympia guy. So he was like losing to guys that are on the like higher end of that top 10. And Bonac is a good example of that. He lost to Bonac a couple times this year. Michael Krizo he lost to at that New York Pro. And Bonac was 7th at the Olympia last year. He lost to Bonac, I think, every time he faced him. So I think that puts him more in the top 10 conversation than top 6, even though he's very consistent. But like if you look at the 2 shows that he won, winning the M Pro Classic, Angel Calderon was 2nd. That's a 212 guy, not a top 10 Open Olympian by any stretch of the imagination. Then the Toronto Pro that Sauce won, Regan Grimes was 2nd, and at Regan's last Olympia in 23, he was 9th. So again, I feel like the argument for Sauce is more a top 10 placing than top 6. And I have Brett at the bottom of this bracket, and again, it's kind of the same thing. Like with Brett, I feel like we haven't seen as much from him. So he qualified last year for this year's Olympia at the end of the, well, not even the end of the year, like summer of last year, September of 2024, he won Legion, which qualified him for this year's Mr. Olympia. Then we hadn't seen him since 2022. So we didn't even see him in 2023. We saw him win the Big Man Weekend in 22. He was 2nd at Romania in 22, 6th at the Arnold in 22. With Brett, it's kind of the same thing. We haven't seen him as much recently. In fact, we haven't seen him at all in 2025. He's no longer working with Matt Jansen. We don't know how that's going to impact his physique for the Olympia. For me, in 2025, when I look at Brett, I love his physique. I love his structure. I think he's got a ton of potential. But for me, it's hard for me to say Brett's a top 6 guy this year at the Olympia based on what we've seen from him so far. We haven't seen him at all in 2025. I've seen a few physique updates here and there, not a lot. In 2024, the only show that we saw was the Legion show, which, again, to be fair, it wasn't the deepest lineup at that Legion show. I mean, 2nd place was Bruno Santos, and 3rd place was Martin Hernandez. And to be like totally real with you guys, no disrespect to Martin Hernandez, I don't remember what he looked like at all. And Martin Hernandez, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I don't want you to catch a stray here, but that's kind of why I have Brett on the bottom end of this like 2nd tier, is I haven't really seen him against these top Olympians recently. And these other guys that are above him are guys like Beirut that have. Or at least even a guy like Sauce that has battled a lot of these guys and maybe had some close encounters with some top Olympians. If you ask me, this is one thing I would give to Sauce. If you ask me, I think that Andrew Jack was in such bad shape at that FIBO prejudging, I would have loved to see Sauce win that show. And if he had, he would have beaten a top 5 Olympian, and he would be in my top tier bracket. But before we move on into the final and bottom bracket here, let me know what you guys think of my 2nd bracket. What do you agree with or disagree with on? Now, moving into the bottom bracket, the 3rd bracket, it's just 2 guys, and I don't want to be super disrespectful to either of these guys, Chen Long Shen and Dorian Haywood. Now, these 2 guys are guys that I think are going to be outside of the top 10, to be completely honest with you. And I'm not even really going to go into physique updates and critique them too hard. But Dorian Haywood, to my knowledge, has never won an Open Pro show unless it was a Masters show. And to be completely honest, that Masters Olympia lineup, it was controversial for 1. And for 2, it just wasn't a deep lineup at all. Besides Dorian and Phil Klahar, and Fred Biggie Smalls, I should say. I'm not remembering the entire lineup, but to be completely honest, when they announced that list, I hadn't heard of 90%, 75% of the guys that were competing there. And half the first call-out I hadn't even heard of. And then Chen Shen, I actually did not have an issue with him winning that China Pro. That was the show that he won. He won that show ahead of, Andrea Presti. Now there's been controversy with these China Pros, and that's why I don't want to speak too much on it, because the controversy kind of is that the Chinese athlete wins when maybe they shouldn't. But I remember that show. I don't think he should not have won, but he won a show where there's not the best reputation with some of these shows. So just me being honest, me being real here, I think these are two guys that likely will be outside of the top 10. That's why I have them in the bottom bracket as far as debuts. And keep in mind, guys, we're not even talking about, I'll maybe do a different video tomorrow about guys that just straight up were not at last year's Olympia. Like, who was not there last year that's going to do damage? So as good as these guys are, these are first-timers at the Olympia. Think about Nick Walker wasn't there last year. Regan Grimes has been looking really impressive. He wasn't there last year. Look at Tonio Burton wasn't there last year. He was top 8 in 23, but he wasn't at last year's Olympia. This is why I'm telling you guys, this top 10 could be so different this year. You've got 9 guys making their Olympia debut, and just 3 guys that I named. There might be more, but that's 12 guys just off the top of my head that were not at last year's Olympia. And a good chunk of those guys, you can make a strong argument for top 10 this year. And that's why I wanted to make this video so long and in-depth, is because I think this is an important video, because I really do think when the Olympia is over and we're looking at the results and we're looking at the top 10, I think when we compare the top 10 at this year's 2025 Olympia to last year, I think it's going to be vastly different, and people are going to be shocked by some of these placings. And we're going to look back at maybe videos like this where it was like, yeah, of course it was going to be this way. Look at all the guys that weren't even there last year that are great. I mean, even just the guys that we talked about. Look at Urs, Good Vito, Neckzilla, Beirut, Sasarati. These are guys that we've talked about all year long. Some of the biggest, most talked about bodybuilders of the year. They're making their first ever Olympia appearance. That could be half the top 10 right there. And let's pull up the list just one time here. We're not even, so all these guys that we've talked about here, even let's include Nick, Tonio, and Regan. We have not even entered into the discussion Hadi Chupin, Martin Fitzwater. You've also got, Akeem Williams. He was top 10 last year. William Bonac, Andrew Jacked, Brandon Curry, Derek Lunsford, Samson Dowdett. Like, this top 10 could look so crazy different this year. I think it's going to shock people. Like, I'm telling you guys, man, even me, just remove my YouTube channel from all of it. Me as a bodybuilding fan, I cannot wait to see what happens with these Olympia debuts. I can't wait to see what this Olympia is going to be. Awesome, dude. It's going to be awesome. And I'm not even accounting for in this video. There's some guys that we talked about that are making their first ever Olympia appearance that could have a Martin Fitzwater year. Martin Fitzwater's Olympia debut, he was top 4. There's several guys on this list that I can see that happening to. You could have a guy, one of these guys that has never been on the Olympia stage before, could be standing in a call-out with Samson Dowdett, Derek, Hadi, Nick. One of these guys could be that guy. And that's only talking about the first 4 placings. The rest of the top 10 could be all of these guys for all we know. As a bodybuilding fan, we have been absolutely feasting in 2025. And I want to say, so this week, I'm going to try, my goal is going to be for this entire week to post, instead of 1 video a day, or even I've done, 1 video every other day, I want to try to do 2 to 3 videos every single day. This being my 3rd video for today at 1 week out. I want to post as much content as I possibly can because I am excited for this year's Mr. Olympia. So please do me a favor, hit subscribe, hit like. I'm going to work my ass off this week. Maybe 3 videos a day every single day. We'll see what we can do, because there's been so much news that we've been blessed with here. So what I might do, and you guys can give me feedback on this in the comments, like what I was thinking of doing to get 2 videos a day was doing 1 news video only for Open, and then 1 news video only for Classic, but every day, and then maybe a 3rd video that's like a random topic or whatever. And I'm going to do my prediction videos. I didn't even do one last year because I had my sister's wedding. I don't even know if I told you guys this or not, but last year my sister's wedding was on the day of the Olympia. So I didn't really, like, I had the rehearsal dinner the day before, and I didn't really do as much in those 2 days as I would have liked to. Like, I got back from the wedding at like 2 or 3 in the morning and made my Olympia recap last year. But anyway, this year I've got all the time in the world. I've got no commitments, nothing to do except for cover the Olympia. So what I was going to do was try to do 3 videos a day, maybe 1 Open, 1 Classic Physique, and like 1 random topic. But if you guys have any suggestions of what you want to see me cover, let me know. That's why I didn't do like I usually do like an Olympia prediction video for each category at a week out, and I didn't do it last year because there was just so much going on with my sister's wedding like the week leading up to it. And that's also why I was like super drunk in that Olympia recap video last year, if you go back and watch it. But this is like, that's how much I enjoy the Olympia. I even had like an argument with my sister last year. I was even considering this. I only have 1 sister. I only have 1 sibling. I was even considering skipping her wedding to cover the Olympia. And we had an argument about this, like, bro, you're going to go watch a bodybuilding show instead of see me get married? But that's how much I love this shit. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my 3rd YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.